Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast will contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, please check out our channel Reviews Without Remorse on YouTube and VidMe. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show. Welcome one and all to another edition of Reviews Without Remorse. I am the Cape Crusader, Joseph Darlington, along with my youthful ward, Dave Lamont. What's going on, partner?
First of all, youthful? Dude, I'm technically 8 months older than you. Screw you.
Not technically. You are 8 months older than me. On today's episode, we will discuss the Death Wish trailer. Another remake, another trailer. We will discuss Star Trek Discovery. Holy cow, that ship is sinking fast. We're gonna talk about it. And then Dave and I are going to get into a little philosophical discussion about Kevin Feige. Is he a filmmaker? Some say yes. We will discuss. And then we will get into our main topic, Rocky 2.
You can't win, Rock.
You're a bum, Rock.
I love my family. But when they needed me most.
911, what is your emergency?
There's men, they're breaking into my house. I think they're here. No.
I failed to protect them.
The Death Wish trailer. Holy cow. All right, it's a trailer. What do you got, Dave?
What do I got? I kind of wish I had gotten 2 minutes of my life back. I mean, what? Who thought this was a good idea? The whole point of the original Death Wish was this was a time and place in New York City when things were just crap. I mean, serious crap. The city was, not quite a war zone, but it was bad. I mean, this was like in the 70s and it was rough. New York nowadays is, I don't want to say Disney-fied, but, kind of sort of, it's not quite as bad as it used to be. And
it's not Gotham City like it used to be.
Yeah, exactly. And here comes a remake of a movie still set in the same city where he's all action hero-y and he's all quippy and he's all like, it's like, do you claim to like the original Death Wish?
I was really rooting for this when I saw it when it started. It had little glimmers of possibility, and I kind of had my fingers crossed. I was I'm like, come on, you could do it. But before you know it, it kind of just sank into I don't know, like nothing about it seems interesting. Even the cinematography looks boring. The dialogue looks kind of plain, like very lackluster. I kind of feel like this is going to be on the $3 bin pretty soon.
I was not impressed at all. It did not inspire me any confidence in this movie. I felt like as I watched this, it's like I'd rather watch the original Bronson movie.
Exactly. I mean, frankly, they could have just called it something else.
Yep. No. I'm out. I'm not. I have no interest. No interest whatsoever.
The Klingon Empire has been in disarray for generations.
We've encountered them.
We have been waiting for someone worthy of our attention.
Captain, incoming!
Star Trek Discovery. We talked about this last week because the trailer, a trailer dropped at Comic-Con, so we talked about it, and you had mentioned, it's funny, you had mentioned the third iteration of the Klingons, and as you were saying it, I was kind of like, oh, I didn't even notice that, so whatever. I watched the trailer again and realized those black things are supposed to be Klingons.
Yeah.
I was like, wait. I didn't even catch that the first time around. I didn't even know that they were supposed to be Klingons.
That's what I was talking about. Yes.
Holy cow. Yeah, wow. It's funny. And again, I saw the trailer and I just I guess I was so bombarded with trailers the last 2 weeks, I didn't even put much stock in it. I watched it again, and I was watching and listening to some things about this production. Wow, what a mess this is. This thing is sinking fast and is probably good. Apparently, toy companies were going to make toys. They don't even want to make toys anymore. There were so many things in progress that they're getting cold feet because it's just looking so terrible. It's weird. And as I was listening to everything, there was sort of a weird debate as to whether or not this was happening in the Prime universe or the Kelvin universe, right? But they also said this was 20 years before Kirk.
Something like that, 10 or 20 years, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, 10 or 20 years before Kirk. And so then it dawned on me, wait a second. If this is before Kirk, there is no Kelvin timeline yet. There is no split yet.
Right.
So what was that all about? But apparently everybody said, well, but it looks like the Kelvin verse. So what's going on here? Apparently this is all going back to a split of the rights. You probably know this already. This is going back since Lucy and Ricky owned Desilu. Then it became Viacom, or Viacom bought that split. Paramount had it, but then there was a split again. So now CBS has some of the Star Trek rights. Paramount has the other Star Trek rights. So really, they're doing this series under the guise of being in the Prime Universe, even though they really don't own anything or have access to much of anything, except for what exists in the Kelvin universe, which is the new Star Trek series.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why this is such a hot mess. And I'm saying to myself, well, why did they bother calling this why did they bother saying this was in the Prime universe? Why did they say this is before Kirk? Why would they bother with that? Why not just have a little side series that falls in the Kelvin universe, just a different ship doing different things or whatever? I don't quite get that. So I'm baffled by this whole thing.
I have no idea what the original creator of the series was a man by the name of Brian Fuller. Brian Fuller worked on Star Trek: The Next Generation and a couple of episodes, I think, of Voyager, maybe one or two of Deep Space Nine. I don't really 100% know for sure. But, Brian Fuller has actually carved himself out a really great career. If you've never seen it, it's on Hulu. Check out the Hannibal TV series. It's actually quite good. And he also did...
I've heard, yeah.
He also did Dead Like Me, Pushing Daisies. He's a very prolific creator. And this was originally his baby, and then he left it. And you have to think to yourself, okay, if this guy, and this guy's got some weird out there ideas sometimes, if this guy's leaving the show, you know that whatever it was he originally intended is long gone.
And it's funny too. I mean, even Seth MacFarlane hit it on the head, because I was rewatching trailers and just looking at some of the photos. Mm-hmm. Even just the shots of the bridge, again, dark, but with very harsh lights. And it's like, even Seth MacFarlane said it. He says, not everything has to be Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Why does everything have to go this dark, gritty road? I mean, it's so overdone. And like you said last week, more people are excited about the Orville than this show.
I'm more excited about the Orville.
Same here. And apparently what's funny, again, you know how Seth MacFarlane did all of the Star Wars films? He did Family Guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Family Guy had done all the Star Wars films. Well, apparently MacFarlane's a big fan of Star Trek also, and I think he wanted to do that, but because of this tanglement with the ownership rights, he just couldn't get it. So basically he just said, he's like, hey, you know what? I'd love to do a Star Trek thing, and here he is doing it. So yes, now we got something that looks 10 times more like Star Trek than this other hot mess over here.
He actually has said in an interview that been so disappointed with where Star Trek has gone that the Orville, in a way, is kind of a throwback to that. This is, nobody else was doing a Star Trek series. Nobody would let me do a Star Trek series, so I did my own Star Trek series.
And it makes perfect sense too. I mean, again, when you watch the shots of the Orville versus the shots of the new Star Trek, I mean, again, like I said, that bridge, this is their mission control center. This is where they are going to spend their time. This is their work area. Mm-hmm. And it looks like a room that if you were really there, you couldn't wait to get the hell out of there.
Yeah, pretty much.
You'd run out of there, rub your eyes, go lay down with your eyes closed for a while, because it just looks so. Again, your eyes would be hurting in this environment. So nothing about it makes any sense. And again, yeah, because they can't get rights to some of the Prime Universe stuff, now the Klingons can't look like Klingons. Why are you even bothering with this? This is such a weird, strange cash grab, really, too.
It's a terrible cash grab. It's an obvious cash grab.
But it's gonna blow up in their faces big time. Apparently, this is gonna sink like a stone.
Good, fine. CBS. No, seriously. Every once in a while, you're going to have to take the clunkers from Star Trek. Star Trek itself is not going to go away. It's too valuable a property, and in the right hands, it can be fine. It can be revitalized. I'm not worried about that. What I want to die, I want their stupid streaming service to die. I want it to die a painful death. We have Hulu. We have Amazon. We have Netflix. You don't want to work with these guys because you want all the money. Well, screw you, you sons of guns. Screw each and every one of you. Netflix is the big boy on the for a reason. All right? And Amazon, even to a lesser extent, and even Hulu to a lesser extent, are the big boys on the block. Why can't you work with them? You know, why must you own it all?
This is one of those that's so bad. I'd actually be very curious to hear later on some of the behind-the-scenes decision-making that actually made this. Because, again, why you would make a Star Trek series set in a timeline that you don't have the rights to when you didn't have to. I don't know, unless there's something I don't understand. But you're right. As far as me buying another streaming service for this show, that's all. I don't know what else they're offering on the streaming service, but if you think this is going to do it, hell no.
Well, they're offering all the classic Star Trek series. They're offering all CBS shows, so you can get all the Big Bang Theory you've ever wanted in your life.
Great. But the original Star Trek is already on Netflix, or are they going to yank that?
Oh, that's going eventually. You know it is.
Okay.
You know, and it's a shame too because they
enjoy
look
it while you can.
I don't care. Honestly, if this is the type of skullduggery they're going to do, you know, let them die. I'm going to quote Kirk from Star Trek VI now. Let them die.
He a wonderful storyteller, fantastic, and I would make the argument that they are two of the greatest directors on the planet. Yeah. But a filmmaker goes beyond just the person who is like, I think it would be cool if we did this. Or the person who's like, hey, I read a great script and I think I can bring something to it. I think I can elevate, if at the very least execute or something. You're talking about somebody who in a short period of time, my guy, Kevin Feige, has been plotting an entire run of movies just on the back of one. It starts very quietly with Iron Man, and a gamble begins there where if this works, we can keep going. There are multiple phases, and they're planning this thing a decade. They've been doing it 10 years. How many Marvel movies have been made so far in 10 years?
A lot.
There you go.
Kevin Feige. Is Kevin Feige a filmmaker? Dave and I will discuss. Would you please explain to us what we're talking about here?
So I listen to a bunch of podcasts. One of the ones I listen to is Kevin Smith's Smodcast and Kevin Smith's Fat Man on Batman. And for the Comic-Con podcast, he talked about how he was invited to Screen Junkies to do movie fights. And he was going up against Elijah Wood, and the first question that was asked was, who is the best modern filmmaker out there today? You know, still working, still active, still making films today. And as I was listening to the podcast, you know, Kevin, he came up with, you know, Kevin Feige. And he didn't win the round against Elijah Wood, but it got kind of stuck in my craw. It's like, you know, that's actually a really good answer. And the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? He has a point. I really do believe that, he'd even specifically said the word they used was filmmaker. Had they used director or writer or anything along those lines, it would have narrowed it down. But filmmaker, you know, is such a broad term. And we started talking about it through text, and Joe didn't fall in with my philosophy. And I just said, we need to save this for the show. We need to discuss this on the show because I feel like this is some gold that we might be digging here.
Yeah, it is definitely an interesting proposal, and I think there was actually two other guys because one said I don't know which was which, but one said Steven Spielberg, the other one said Martin Scorsese.
Right, and
I thought two perfectly brilliant answers. I think Scorsese is one of the few geniuses working today, and actually he's got a little competition these days. There are a lot of talent out there now. Classically though, Scorsese, and you have to give it to Spielberg, and then you're right, then Kevin Feige, and I scratched my head and I said, I like the idea. I think Kevin Feige is a guy that deserves tremendous praise for what he has accomplished. I think he's probably the hardest working guy in film today. I think that there's billions of dollars in that franchise that are solely thanks to him. This guy deserves a colossal raise, whatever he's getting. Whether or not he's a filmmaker is a different story. The example that I kept falling back on was like, look, I own a home. I want a nice lawn and nice landscaping. And I hire landscapers and mowers and whatever, and I explain to them exactly what I want. And I want this here and I want this there. And they do it exactly the way I've explained it. And they've done it well. That does not make me a gardener. I don't know. I mean, he is the brains behind this universe. But again, if if you pluck one of those films out, even one that you think is the best one, like let's say Winter Soldier is whatever you think is the best Marvel film yet. And if you were going to say this is a great film, thank you, Kevin Feige, would you pass over the Russo brothers and the other creative people behind this to say Kevin Feige is the guy who made this film? I don't know. Like when you talk about the universe, yeah, I'd say he has to be the brains behind it, but the individual films, I don't know.
Okay, well, I'm going to start by taking your analogy. I tell them to do my gardening and so on and so forth. You're talking about the traditional producer hat. The traditional producer, let's go back a little ways. Let's go to like, Gruber Peters, the guys who did the Batman movies. Okay?
Okay.
John Peters, the guy who was going to make the Superman movie for guys like us on the street, continuing the Kevin Smith little analogy that we had earlier. Okay.
With the giant spider?
With the giant spider, deadliest animal in the universe. Okay. Right? Now here's the difference there between the John Peters and the Kevin Feiges. Okay. John Peters doesn't have the ability to come up with story. He wants elements. He'll say, I want Brainiac. I want Brainiac and Lex Luthor to combine. I want a giant spider. I want a gay robot. That's the assignment he gives to the people. This is completely different than what Kevin Feige does. Kevin Feige is more, John Peters is a homeowner and he's, having them mow the lawn for him. Feige is an architect on a giant building and he gives it to people that are much more talented than him. And he will be the first to even say, these people are much more talented than me. But
right.
The general design of the building is this. It's like, how you build this building, I'm leaving up to you. But these are the important floors. This floor is very important and has to be explored. This floor is very important and has to be explored. He's not dictating exactly where the story is going, but there are beats in it that all deal with stuff that he has to deal with further down the line. He's not doing it because I want to see a giant robot. He's not dealing with it because, oh, look, Star Wars has a gay robot. We should have a gay robot. That's not the reason he's doing it. These are carefully precise things that he's putting in there because he knows there's a larger payoff down the line. He doesn't want to stifle the creativity. And every single element from his first movie forward, he's had his hand in. Now, he's not been perfect all the time. He's had his clunkers here and there. But really, here's the thing. I agree with Kevin Smith, but I kind of feel like that the jury is still completely out. Because until we actually see the end of phase 3, I believe we're in, when we see the end of phase 3, which is basically as far as he had with regards to story, when we see the end of phase 3, that's when we're going to really know for sure if this whole experiment even worked or not. His input into these stories, his final say into each of these stories makes a difference. He doesn't take away from the artists. I would never take away from the Russos and the amazing work that they did with Winter Soldier or the writers who, I feel horrible saying this, but I forget their names, but they've been basically working, they've taken the lead in writing since Captain America First Avenger forward, and now they're doing the Infinity War movies. Okay? These are people that are fans of the product as well. So they have the things that they want to do, but they still have to pay tribute to the overarching story every once in a while. Not much, and they've gotten better at it since Iron Man 2. They haven't kind of thrown it in our face the way that they did with Iron Man 2. This is all Feige. This is Feige controlling the strings on this. This is Feige designing the floors of this building. And we're nearing the penthouse now. We are nearing the penthouse, and the penthouse is the culmination of this building. And I feel like I agree with Kevin Smith that he is a filmmaker, because if not for him keeping these strings going, the entire plot of the major movie in Infinity War falls apart. And that is the culmination of this entire thing.
Yeah, listen, I nothing about what you said do I disagree with. I think he is absolutely the analogy of the architect is perfect. That is exactly what he is, and I completely agree with that. My issue is probably simply a matter of semantics, and do you call that person a filmmaker? The end result is a film or multiple films. Actually, if you think about it this way, he's not really responsible for individual films. He's actually responsible for the collection of films.
Right.
It is the collection that he can really say that's what he created. They wouldn't work as a whole if it wasn't for him. Again, though, I say to myself, but is that what a filmmaker is? Simply put, you'd have to change your definition of the word filmmaker, I think, to do that. I mean, again, if my job is to be a graphic artist, okay, and I work with other talented graphic artists, and I have a boss who is not a graphic artist, he's a manager. If the sum total of our work, the designs that we do, ends up in somewhere, he managed it, okay? He made the process work. Does somebody call him the best graphic designer ever? I don't know. I think the answer would be no. Still, it's a simple matter of do you say that person, as gifted and talented as they are, and as much I mean, I almost say to myself, look, if he's not a filmmaker, then what is he? I'm more than willing to say you create a separate category for him, and whatever category that is, he is far beyond the best. It's as simple as that. But is he a filmmaker the way like a Spike Lee is a filmmaker, or Steven Soderbergh is a filmmaker, or Martin Scorsese is a filmmaker? I have a hard time simply with that comparison because then you get into the argument of fairness. Is it fair to say that? I mean, Martin Scorsese has a body of work, but he's been doing this for decades. Okay. Is it fair for a Kevin Feige to come along who's controlling and influencing all of these other works, but he's not a hands-on filmmaker? So is it fair to say that he is a better filmmaker than Martin Scorsese? I don't believe that's your point, but when a Kevin Smith says, yes, this is the best filmmaker working today, that is his point, is that he is a better filmmaker than a Spielberg and a Scorsese. And my point is simply that I don't know that is a fair apples-to-apples comparison, and I still have to say that Kevin Feige, brilliant as he is, and as thankful as I am that he is doing what he is doing, a filmmaker is not exactly accurate. It's simple as that.
Well, then I'm going to do two things. Number one, if I could be wrong, they might have used the word prolific. Who is the most prolific filmmaker? You know, if that's the case, he's got them beat, because one of the definitions of prolific is producing many works. And the man has done 16 movies in 10 years.
You got that right. I mean, that's for damn sure.
Right? And
nobody's going to take that away from him.
And where I'm going to slam it down and prove to you once and for all that Kevin Feige for sure is a filmmaker is from a little dictionary from a place called Oxford, which defines the word filmmaker as a person who directs or produces movies for the theater or television. I win. Now, granted,
ding, ding, ding.
I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying he is the best. I'm saying that for the sheer audacity of what he's doing, for the sheer undertaking, for throwing so many balls up in the air and trying to pluck each one out of the sky before they hit the ground, I will give that man all the credit in the world, and I will absolutely 100% say whether he's the best, whether he's the most prolific, or whatever definition it was that they used. If it's prolific, it still kind of works, but that's beside the point. Whatever the definition was, is he the best? I'm not going to argue with you on that. Is he a filmmaker? From the literal definition and from everything else that he's put into the Marvel Cinematic Universe so far, I'm saying yes, he is.
See, it's funny. I would actually say back to you the opposite of what you just said. Frankly, if you ask me, is he the best at what he does? I would say absolutely. As far as what he does, I would absolutely call him the best at what he does. Yet, I would still have a problem calling him a filmmaker.
I just gave you the definition, damn it. I reject that definition out of principle.
And we'll put it this way, that you know what? Oxford may be right, and who am I to argue with Oxford? But by that definition, the John Peters of the world are filmmakers and are on the same playing field as, I don't know, if somebody who plunks the money down to me is not a filmmaker. Listen, I'm agreeing with everything you said, and you put it this way: I'll wave the white flag because you got me dead to rights. That if that is the actual definition of a filmmaker, I got no choice but to say, all right, then I guess you got me. But like I said, it just sits funny with me.
That's fine, man. That's absolutely positively fine.
Rocky His whole life was a 1,000,000-to-1 shot, but he's about to show the world he's 1 in a million.
Why don't you stand up and fight this guy hard, like you done before? That was beautiful.
Rocky II, the story continues.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rocky II, directed and written by Sylvester Stallone. Rocky struggles...
Which makes him a filmmaker.
And here is your synopsis for this movie. Rocky struggles in family life after his bout with Apollo Creed, while the embarrassed champ incessantly goads him into accepting a challenge for a rematch. That's as good as a synopsis as you can give. Rocky II literally picks up exactly where Rocky I leaves off, with an ambulance ride to the hospital after the fight, because Apollo Creed's got broken ribs and Rocky's eye is just all messed up from the first fight.
Yeah, and this is interesting. You know, it's funny that you mentioned Jaws 2 a while back. This was sort of an era where not a lot was really expected from film sequels. Mm-hmm. They kind of had a reputation for just like, oh, this one made a lot of money, we'll do it again. You just do the same thing over again, and you tweak it the best you can or whatever. Right? Jaws 2, very similar. Jaws 2, you just do the same thing with whoever you can get to sign on, and there you go. So not a lot was expected from Rocky 2. Personally, I think not only does it exceed expectations as far as just a sequel goes, it's different than the first one. There's a lot of magic it can't quite recapture. The screenplay is different. The screenplay is not as fresh and realistic and vibrant as the first film.
No.
But I also find that the story structure here works really well. Insofar as what somebody might call oversimplified, I think is just a clearer struggle. You see exactly how the struggle, how the problems evolve, how the struggle happens, the things we need to do to try to overcome the struggles. I would even say that there are some screenplay tools that are used here that I think make the story work well, and I'll talk more about that later. But there are some elements that this film does even better than the first. You know, it's funny. Growing up, my brothers and I can't even tell you how many times we've had discussions about which Rocky is the best, which one is our favorite. My brother Kevin always goes with Rocky 2. He says Rocky 2 is clear and away the best one.
And what's his rationale for that one?
He just likes it the best. I mean, you know, it works really well. First of all, again, you're sort of doing the same idea again. It's going to end with a big fight. This one, instead of it being a draw or Apollo Creed wins, this time Rocky wins the championship. He wins the belt. That is pretty good. It almost sounds like an oversimplified, how can we do the first one and do it better? But it did. I mean, you walk away and you're really pumped up. And again, like I said, there are tools that this film uses that it sort of falls back on. Like, for one thing, there's an expression that I've heard used when it comes to screenplays, and it is like the kryptonite syndrome, where each character has his or her own personal kryptonite. Something that specifically holds that person back that they have to overcome to get to where they're going. In this case, Adrian is the kryptonite. Adrian, just by virtue of the fact that she does not want him to fight, and she's all worried, and Rocky can't get his head in the game because she's all upset, and like the harder he works, it's taking a toll on his family, on his love, the great love of his life. So he can't get his head together. And then boom, then you have the drama with, she has the baby and she falls into the coma, which, by the way, leads to some very poignant emotional scenes, which I really like. So once, she wakes up and everything seems like it's getting back to normal, and right when he's about to say, listen, you know what, he's beaten at that point. He says, look, I'm not going to keep torturing my wife this way. We'll work something else out.
Listen, I've been thinking, if you don't want me mixing with Creed no more, we'll make out some other kind of way,
There's one thing I want you to do for me.
What?
Come here. Win. Win.
What are we waiting for? Take this!
bing, and the score kicks in. Mickey goes, "What are we waiting for?" And they jump up, and it's like that moment in Superman 1 when you think about it. When he's in the pool, he's got the kryptonite on him. As soon as she pulls it off and he takes off, boom, the score erupts and the action starts, and that's kind of what happens in Rocky 2. It's like the bell rings, he's off. He's off and running, and the training montage kicks in, the real training montage. I mean, it really works well. I think it's fantastic. Like I said, some might look at this and say it's oversimplified or whatever. I don't know. I think Stallone is really starting to come into his own as a filmmaker. You notice things in this film that they didn't quite do in the first one. Even like the fight at the end. The big fight scene now is relying more on the score. There's slow motion shots now. They're doing more creative things that they didn't do in the first one. The first one was straight up boxing, and again, score's great. The budget is limited. The camera work is limited, but it's okay. It worked in the first one. But here, they're taking more chances, doing more things. So again, in a lot of ways, I think it's even better than the first one.
I can't agree with your brother on it being better than the first Rocky. I felt like the first Rocky was perfect. We couldn't find a single thing wrong with that movie. Whereas in this movie, in its need to evolve and yet relatively keep the same pace as the first movie, it throws the first chink in the Rocky armor for that goes throughout I want to say the first 5 until Rocky Balboa comes along and truly does something different as far as I'm concerned, but we'll get to that when we get to Rocky 5. I felt like as I was watching it, the beginning of the movie is both brilliant and really hard to get through. Really, really hard to get through. Mm-hmm. I felt very uncomfortable watching Rocky spend above his means. Because this is the beginning of the movie. You know that, this isn't going to end well. And he's all confident and cocky and stuff like that. And it was hard to watch that. And that's a tribute to the amazing character he created and the connection that he makes with you in the audience. Because you're 5 minutes into a movie and already you are worried about these people. You are very, very worried about these people. They have just gotten married, and you're already worried about them. I mean, even and I love the little subtle things he throws in there, like how over his head he is now with this little bit of money he got after taxes from the first fight and everything like that. Where Gazzo, Tony goes to him, listen, I have a suggestion for investment, and he actually offers him a really sound financial investment for what that was at the time. He said to him, you should invest in condominiums. And Rocky's response, he gets this look on his face, and God bless Stallone because he did it so damn well. He gets this almost half embarrassed look on his face, I don't use them. And it's
I think when I was a kid, it took me a long time before I got that joke.
I don't think I remember getting it until just watching it now.
Much later, yeah. Yeah.
But
but
that was my point. That beginning part was actually, to me, the first 30 minutes of that movie is brilliant stuff. I mean, here's the guy. This is the Cinderella story. He had his shot, and now we're seeing the end result of that shot. And the truth is, the unfortunate reality is most of the time, once that shot is over with, these people wind up going back to a life of ignominy, I think is the word that I'm looking for. I mean, for God's sake, he winds up shoveling up, pieces of meat from the meat factory to try to make ends meet. Because, one of the things, and it never was brought up in the first movie, but when you find out that he's illiterate, it's like, oh, of course, he grew up on the streets of Philadelphia. He was a tough guy. It wouldn't be out of the realm for him to be illiterate. And, and there it is. And that costs him the one thing that he was truly counting on to get them through.
I'll tell you what, too. I really like that, by the way. I like that. I thought that was a pretty nice little insert. That was the idea that he's now suddenly struggling because he never learned how to read. That's almost kind of awfully mature for a Rocky film if you think about it. I mean, this is a problem that affects the inner city kids all the time, and and a guy like Rocky, who grew, like you said, grew up on the streets, didn't have much of an education. They say in this film he never got past the ninth grade, so it would make sense that he's a pretty poor reader. I thought that was a nice touch. Well, first of all, what you said about how you're early into it, it's hard to watch because you see. I thought that made sense. Now, there's a lot of films that will do it differently. A lot of films will show people and everything is going so well until like the rug is pulled out from under them. And I can think of films where you see it coming, that you start to get nervous because everything like the second everything is just going wonderfully well, they're going to be in a car wreck like any second. I've had movies where I'm like that, where I could see it go. It's things are just go a little too well. Something's going to happen, and sure enough, like bam, there's a car crash or whatever. This one, I thought it made sense this way because again, now in the first one, Rocky was always down on his luck. He was, it would make sense in this film that a guy, you throw a bunch of money at him, he's not going to know how to handle it. Like you said, is he going to run and invest it wisely? No, he's going to be like a lot of athletes who they get a big pile of dough, and before you know it, they're broke because they don't know how to manage their money. So I thought there was a logic to it, and here's the thing too, I'm not here to pitch the idea that this is better than the first one. I think even my brother would say, like if he was sitting here right now, he'd probably say, look, I didn't say it was a better film. I'm just saying it's my personal favorite. I have a personal favorite out of the Rockies, and it's not Rocky 1. I think Rocky 1 is a brilliant film, but again, it just sort of hits you on a gut level. And that's sort of my pitch for Rocky 2, is that I think there are some great things about this film that really do sort of hit you on a gut level and works really well. There's a lot that I think don't work in this film either. I think that like I said before, the screenplay is not as fresh as it was. There are some odd. They try to, Rocky's not so bright, so they throw in when he's downstairs after he just lost his job and he's talking about fighting again, and she says something like, "What about your bad eye?" He goes, "Oh, my eye's fine. I see like a beagle or something." There's a lot of those sort of things that starts to show up here. They do that a lot in some of the Rockies, where they'll just rely on word jokes as this is how we know he's not so bright because he says the wrong word. That's a little simple for me. That's first draft sort of stuff. I liked it better in the first one when it was much more nuanced. Other things that are maybe not as good, Apollo becomes a little more of the mustache twisting villain in this one. You still understand his motivation. In fact, in some ways, you understand it even better than the first one, because now it's like now something happened to him. And he did not expect what happened. So the idea that he would be thrown off and he's angry and he's looking to get some payback or set things right again, that made sense. But again, but it does sort of allow him or force him to be a little more of the antagonist. Yeah. Paulie is different in this one, by the way. This is the only one in the whole series, frankly, that it's really odd what happens to him in this film. He's like 50 pounds lighter. He looks like the only guy in the room who's got his stuff together. Like Rocky goes to him to sell the car. Well, Paulie, since when does he have 50 cents to rub together? Now suddenly, and incidentally, he, in the first one, when are you going to talk to Gazzo? When are you going to talk to Gazzo? And I think Rocky never bothered because he's like, Paulie's not a collector. What is he? If Paulie goes after somebody for money, the guy's going to beat Paulie up. So, I mean, that was always how I interpreted that. Like, why Rocky would never go to Gazzo, because he's like, this guy can't be a collector. He was saving Paulie a headache. And didn't have the heart to tell him, like, Paul, you can't, you're going to run after somebody? You're like 50 pounds overweight. But here it's interesting. Now he's slim. He's dressed nice all the time. He's wearing a suit all the time, and again, he sort of seems like the guy who's got it together, which is strange because by Rocky 3 and 4, he's just right back to being the drunk bum that he was in the first one. So I thought that was sort of funny. Like, I like the line when they're doing the press conference and Paulie's over there, as long as he's going to punch out. and Apollo goes, now who's that, Al Capone? Because he looks like he's a gangster in this movie. Like, he doesn't look like the bum he was in Rocky 1. So again, I'm not really going to try to say that this is a better film than the first one. Okay. I'm not. It's not a better film. Like, this one's not going to get an 11. This one sort of falls in the wayside in the whole Rocky series. because again, it's not quite as it's not the first one, it's not the original, it's not Mr. T, it's not the Russian, yada yada, et cetera, et cetera. So this one sort of falls to the wayside, and I really think this one has a lot to say. One of the other things I like, by the way, that I really like, I think the score in this one is excellent. I mean, the score in the first one, again, was new and exciting and original. Here, I think the score works even better in some places. The score throughout for the fight is awesome. There's a lot. This is a soundtrack I used to listen to a lot. I used to put this one in and listen to it all the way through. All the music here works great. Bill Conti, again, still top of his game here.
I gotta be honest with you. I didn't like some of the synthesized bits that they threw in here, there, and everywhere. That's just a personal taste thing. It's still great music.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I kind of am a traditionalist when it comes to music and movies. I honestly felt like the synthesis stuff that was thrown in there felt almost a little out of place. It felt more like in place with maybe like a science fiction movie, but it was completely inoffensive and it was still effective and wonderful. I mean, it's still this amazing score that Conti basically did all the Rockies, right up to Rocky Balboa.
Almost, but yeah.
Which one didn't he do? I thought he did them all.
Not Rocky IV. Rocky IV, they go off in a wildly different
direction.
direction.
That's right. That's where they did where it was just basically one giant soundtrack. There's no easy way out.
Yeah, and a lot of synthesizer filler stuff for our different scenes, but we will discuss that.
It's on fire.
Apollo, I've been chosen for the rematch.
This fight will be held in the Philadelphia Spectrum, because I want this man's hometown to see this. I want all of Philadelphia, I want all of America, I want the whole world to see me destroy this man after 2 short rounds. Because after this fight, he's going to have to donate what's going to be left of his body to science, but there won't be much. That I can guarantee you.
Rocky, what do you think about the fight taking place in the Spectrum?
Well, I'm very happy about that.
Why?
Well, it's only about 10 minutes from my house.
But still, I felt like this was, if you're going to make a sequel to this movie, this had many logical steps in the direction that it needed to go. It should not have, if Rocky had just, if basically this movie got skipped and they started with Rocky 3 after Rocky 1, that would have made no sense. Having Rocky in Rocky 3 be who he is makes perfect sense when you watch this movie. Because you can basically see the elements of what he is. Hey, Adrian, yeah. I'll get you a fur coat. I'll get that jacket with the tiger, and I'm gonna get the Trans Am because I want to look like the Bandit from Smokey and the Bandit. Those are the little elements that were there. The only thing about this movie, and this is not the movie's fault, but I want you to actually think about this, and I'm going to bring this up in each sequel as we go forward. Do they mention his eye again?
No, they don't. They definitely don't.
I didn't think so, but I am going to ask for each of the subsequent sequels because that was the first thing that popped in my head. It's like, this is a serious thing. They're worried that if he takes a couple of shots in the eye, he's going to lose his eye. He's going to lose sight. In fact, was losing some of his sight because you had that wonderful scene between him and Mickey where he's testing his eyesight and Mickey just slaps him one across the face and he's like, you didn't even see that coming. And I'm just...
That is a powerful scene, too, by the way.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
You got the heart, but you ain't got the tools no more. Now forget it.
Is that right?
That is right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's you who ain't got it no more. You know that?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. That's... Now look. You didn't even see that coming, did you? No. Well, that was from a broken-down pug like me. What do you think the champ would do to you?
Mickey's, and Mickey hits him, and it's like a parent that had to spank a child. That's how Meredith played it, and it was freaking beautiful. And there was Rocky, Stallone takes the shot, and he's got that half second of what the, and then like that chastised look, like he's right. He's absolutely right. And, just knowing,
yes.
I see what you just did there, Mickey. I was, and I'm not happy with the answer. And it was just such a heart-wrenching scene to watch.
Totally. That is really an excellent scene. I like that scene a lot. It works really well, too. And again, I love the build-up in that scene. First it's, hey, how you doing? Oh, they're just sort of catching up. And then Mickey's kind of like, he's like trying to talk some sense into him. Listen, I hear what you're saying, but no. And then it takes a smack in the face to get it across to him. And by the time Rocky, I mean, that's a tough scene. Like, I'm almost welling up watching that scene. That's good stuff. And again, there's a lot of that in this film. Yeah, but you're right. They do paint themselves into a corner by saying the eye is terrible. He's going to go blind. And you're right. They never talk about it again. In fact, by Rocky V, they try to sort of backtrack again, but they say he's got brain damage from getting punched in the head. And even that they don't really mention again.
There's a lot. There's many things about this movie. Some of the tropes that they went to, where with Adrian in the coma, wasn't really feeling that. But honestly, if you think about it, it was relatively original for its time. I mean, how much more original can you be? You're making a sequel to a movie that was a surprise hit and a surprise success and a surprise critical darling, and you're trying to still make a movie that's nearly 2 hours long. And I feel like that some of the screenwriting choices were made simply to pad time. Adrian getting sick. Now, granted, there's a logic to that. The fact that she had to work and had the baby prematurely and stuff like that, that's a very real thing to happen. But then to have her fall into the coma, just kind of was like a little overkill, especially in the 70s, man. In the 70s, you fall into a coma, there's a good chance you're not coming out of it. This is not like today. Okay?
Yeah. No, that's true. I'll give you that. I mean, it didn't bother me, put it that way. I didn't have a problem with it.
I'm looking at it from a pure filmmaking aspect. When we spoke about Rocky last week, one of the things that we mentioned was it's amazing how, even though it's so obvious it takes place in the 70s, there's a timeless quality to it that just was amazing. That, here it is 40 years later, and it's like, man, it's like, if you had told me that this was happening today in Philadelphia, I'd be like, okay, I buy it. But then you have the little plot elements in Rocky 2 that just, for a second there, just remind you, oh yeah, that was kind of a thing. That was kind of a story element thing that you would throw in. And it kind of just momentarily took me out of it. I understand why they had to do it and everything like that. And yeah, Creed's almost literal mustache twirling the stallion chicken
Italian chicken.
All that, Muhammad Ali stuff, which was what he was going for. That's what it was. It was Muhammad Ali,
Yeah.
And again, and I'm not even thinking, and I'm still not saying I didn't enjoy the movie. I love the movie. I love the way it was done. I felt that, and I think this was Stallone's first real, directorial debut, and I thought he pretty much knocked it out of the park for a first-time director.
Agreed, and that is also worth mentioning, by the way, because I think there are a lot of shots in here that I think really work well. Like I said, I mean, the fight scene I mentioned before, like they're using slow motion and they're using the score more to their advantage. Mm-hmm. Some of the shots, when they go to the church, him and Mickey Adrian's gone into the coma. Paulie comes down to the church in the middle of the night. When he's talking and you see the dome of the chapel behind him, that's really good stuff. I love the part when they're sitting watching the movie reel of the first fight. Mickey gets up and he says, speed's what we need. We need greasy, fast speed. And that's when the white light comes up off of the film. And I was like, that's a good shot. That's a really powerful, good looking shot. The way that built up to that moment where he's saying greasy, fast speed. Yep. I love that. I thought that was really good. Yeah, I mean, seriously, this was, like you said, this is Stallone's, it's only his second big film, and this one, it's his first time directing it, and he's writing it again. That's an accomplishment. And I they don't give prizes to your personal best. It's only what's on that screen. That's what you win the awards for. Yet, when you take into consideration the idea that he did this pretty much all by himself, that says something. That's pretty impressive.
It is indeed 100% impressive. I mean, it is only, I looked him up. His first movie was actually, Paradise Alley. That was the first movie that he directed.
Right. Yeah. Oh, did he direct that one too? Okay. I didn't know that.
That was the first movie he directed. And, he's actually only directed, 9 movies. You would think that he would have done more. I mean, we had Paradise Alley, which was basically the first movie he did after Rocky. Rocky 2, Rocky 3, Staying Alive. Oh God, we got to do a show on Staying Alive just for the fun of it.
Please
okay,
don't.
Rocky 4, Rocky Balboa, Rambo, The Expendables. Those are all the movies that he's directed.
Oh, is that? I didn't know he directed the Expendables.
The first one.
That's interesting.
He
yeah,
directed
okay.
the first one. The other one's probably not so much. But
Okay.
yeah, no, he's done a total. He's got another movie called Tough as They Come. That's his next. That's his next movie in the directing queue. 9 movies. Man's had a career for 40 years,
Nice.
and he's only done 9 movies. Good on him.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But anyway, let's get back to Rocky 2. The ending was a nail biter. I mean, even though I knew where it was going, that little beat of the two of them struggling to climb up the ropes. Even today, I was like, damn, that's like, and that's another trope. That is completely a whole new trope now. The last minute victory of the underdog is such a trope that just came from that movie, at any moment here, either one of them can win. If they're both knocked out, Rocky, Rocky doesn't get the title. If Creed gets up and he's down, that's a loss. It's all it is him getting up. And if Creed hadn't just slipped at that last minute, he would have still been champion.
And incidentally too, as a side note, not to foreshadow next week, but I like how that sort of plays into the next chapter. I thought they do that pretty well too. Like I said, I don't want to jump ahead, but I like how they sort of take that and use it in the next one. They incorporate it. I find that pretty interesting. But again, like I said, and I like the idea. It was interesting that they did the thing where here's a little clunky part is when Adrian has to stay home and watch it on TV this time. And I noticed when he's leaving the house, he starts to leave the house. Man, I wish the doctor would let you come to this fight. Oh, and then he's walking out the door. He's like, oh man, I wish you can come. But all that stuff is sort of like in ADR. Like it's like you could tell they sort of dubbed that in later. And it's like they were really trying to drive it home. Okay, she can't go to the fight. We get it. Because I guess otherwise it seems a little strange that she would not have gone. But then him holding the arms up saying, yo, Adrian, I did it. I mean, that's got some punch. I mean, that's terrific. I thought that was, again, you can't remake the first one. You can't, when she runs in, they finally say, I love you, and that's how it ends. That is a climax you can't redo. So I felt this was probably the next best thing you could do. When he just holds it up and he yells, I did it, that's got some punch.
I still felt that because they had to do the whole subplot with her being stuck at home, it ruined what could have been a really nice emotional moment between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's again, not much you can do about that. It's still, in a weird way, it gave it its own voice because, in the cliche world, of course she would be there. And of course she would be up on the stage with on the ring with him to celebrate and hold up the belt with him. It's like, look, the love of my life is with you, blah, 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 blah. So in a weird way, I kind of feel like it was almost more gutsy to have her not be there.
Yeah.
More original. More realistic, maybe.
I definitely say more original. I feel like I said, you can't just replay that first one again. This was great. Yeah. And you get the shots of like Paulie jumping up and down with the beer in his hand and stuff. So, you get that too. Like I said, again, they're really starting to do more things in this film, directorially. That's a good, they I also noticed that they use the commentary by the guys doing the commentary on the fight. That is now becoming like full blown narration. The first one wasn't quite doing that. This was another Rocky trope that you start to see here. Using the ringside guys as commentators. As narrators of what's happening.
Which was, by the way, I thought that was well satirized in the movie Dodgeball with with Lumbergh and Jason Bateman in the parts.
Okay.
I thought that was so brilliantly satirized. But yes, this is the beginning of the announcers as narrators.
Yeah.
And it continues on through the rest of the series. So I gave this movie an 8 out of 10. I thought it was still a great movie. I felt that the only shortcomings, there were 2 major shortcomings. I already went over the one where I felt like, having Adrian fall into a coma was, a bit dicey, but I understand why they did it, but I'm still going to ding it a little bit for that. The other is part of my Who Asked You, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But other than that, it's still a damn solid movie. It's an excellent follow-up to an excellent movie. In fact, to put it in perspective, as much as I enjoyed the first 2 Die Hard movies, this is still better as a sequel than Die Hard 2 is to the first Die Hard.
You know what? I got no problem with that. That makes sense. Yeah, I agree with you. I think, this is like I said, it's a solid follow up. It's not as good as the first one, but is a very solid follow up. Does some things not quite as well. It's not as original, of course. It's not as fresh. But there are some things I think that they do even better. Stallone is honing his craft even more here. The screenplay, like I said, a little clunkier. It's a little more on the nose than the first one, not quite as nuanced. I'm going to go ahead and give this one an 8. I think, like I said, I think an 8 is warranted. I think, like I said, it's not as good as the first one. Still a solid follow up. And I think it's great. I think it gets lost in the shuffle, but I think as a follow up to the first one, it stands up. And I think if people haven't seen it in a while, check it out and give the score a listen to, because there's a lot of really good nuanced stuff in that score. Again, it's funny. Like the first one ends, and you get that sort of classical music. Here, you get something that I find to be stronger and a little more street level sort of stuff. The music that plays in the background when you mention him, he's working in the meat factory and he's by himself and he's working and shoveling the scraps or whatever. The music that plays in the background there, love it. It's kind of like that cool, smoothie, jazzy sort of stuff that I find works pretty well with that street Philadelphia sort of tone. Good stuff. So again, I'm going to give this one an 8. I think it's a solid follow up and very, very worth watching.
Excellent. So,
who asked you? I guess I'll go with the screenplay on this one. Again, like I said, I think it's not as nuanced as it was in the first one. It's a little jokier. Again, they're kind of going for actual punchlines here. The condominium joke, and I see like a beagle. They're going for punchlines here. The first one, the funny part was in the nuanced way people talk to each other. It was simply a matter of you were laughing because the characters were funny and quirky and witty. Here it's a little more on the nose. So I'll go ahead and give it to the screenplay, because just a little tweaking would have helped that a little more.
I could absolutely see that. I feel like the screenplay was a weaker element, especially after the brilliance of the first screenplay. It shows it more because of the just solid first screenplay. Which you gushed about when we talked about it in the first.
I did. I think it's a perfect screenplay. And this one again, I'm not comparing it to the first one. Well, I am, but the first one really, really does a powerful screenplay. Here, I think the story is really good. The screenplay is where it falls short.
All right, well, who asked me? I was not a fan of the double montage.
The double montage?
Yes. Right after she says win, the Going the Distance song from Bill Conti comes up, and there's Mickey all like, let's get out there!
Right.
And the song starts playing, and now it's the training montage.
Yeah.
And it ends with him doing the little punching bag thing and the freeze frame. And I'm like, okay, that's great. And quick shot of him holding his baby, putting the baby down, and then boom, Gonna Fly Now starts. And the next montage, the jogging montage, happens. Literally within a minute of each other. You could have easily combined those two. It just felt like padding. That's why I'm like, no, that shouldn't have been.
Oh, I didn't mind that at all. I
didn't think you would.
No, I totally disagree. First of all, I thought the running scene in this one, now, it's a little over the top maybe, but again, I thought this was a nice progression from the first one, where now you're going to do the running scene again, but instead of Rocky just running himself and running to the top of the steps where the kids follow him, I thought that was pretty well done. I thought that was pretty cool. Now, again, where are these parents when these kids are running to the other side of Philadelphia? But, it's a little don't overthink that part too much. I thought it works great, though. In fact, Rocky IV does something actually very similar.
I'm not, dude, don't get me wrong. I am not saying I had a problem with him running, with the running montage or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I'm saying that you could have done the running montage and you could have intercut it with scenes of him training to show that he's improving, rather than just give two separate beats, which take up a good 8 minutes of film time, And that's what it felt like to me. Like it was just a means of them taking up 8 minutes of film time rather than just 3 minutes of film time to pad the length of the movie. That's what I felt when I watched it.
Yeah, but this is the training montage. I want 8 minutes of training montage. I want lots of training I mean, seriously, I said in the first one, I said, a lot of the movies, the training montage and the fight is what you're waiting for. These are the best parts of the movies. I totally disagree. If they gave me 3, I would have been fine with it.
Oh, you greedy son of a gun.
Yeah, I mean, this to me is like the money shots of the Rocky films. I don't mind that one bit. And the fact that they had 2 different pieces of music for it, okay by me. I thought they worked pretty well.
Wait. You're gonna eat those words when we hit Rocky 4.
Remind me. I don't. Probably not. But remind me. We'll. All right. So what's your
for my consideration?
For your consideration, what do you got?
I thought that the realistic depiction of a guy who got a once-in-a-lifetime shot in the aftermath, that first half hour of that movie, is the most solid piece of filmmaking ever. It's ballsy. It's real. I felt like, yes, this is the logical next step. In this world, in this reality, this is what would happen to somebody like that after that. I felt like that was the best part of the entire movie. The fact that they did respect who this character was and what this sudden fame would do to him. I thought that was brilliant stuff. And I was like, that's brilliant. Never change something like that. More movies could learn to do something like that.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I think that the story-wise, I think it made perfect sense. Even seeing him get out of the hospital with the guy trying to get his signature on a piece of paper already, because he's going to do commercial. I mean, I thought that's exactly how I think it would have happened.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll for your consideration, I'll do it in 2 parts. One, I think the score is terrific. I really do think that score is kind of, again, it's sort of underrated. Listen to it and, tell me what you think. I really think that one is one of the better of the scores. The other part, like I said, I will just give it to the actual story. Again, I said that, the screenplay needs a little work, but the things they do in this story, again, I think it made perfect sense. Rocky, again, a guy who does not have the education enough, like you hear stories about the people who win the lottery, and they end up in worse trouble than before because they just do not know how to handle money. Made perfect sense. I mean, he's out, he can't wait, he's having a good time, he's showering his friends with gifts. It makes sense. Now he's down on his luck. The part when he can't read, I thought makes sense. I like the shot of him going straight from the commercial to the shot of the 2 of them in bed and him reading a little paperback to Adrian. Love that. I thought that was terrific.
Me too.
Mickey is great in this. I love their back and forth in this one. I thought story wise, I really do think they knock it out of the park. And again, if some would call certain things oversimplified. Like I said, there's the kryptonite. There's Adrian says no, then she says win. Now boom, now the shackles are off and he goes crazy. It's an oversimplified story possibly than the first one, but I think it's effective. I think it's very effective. And by the time you get to the end and he wins the top, boom. I mean, we're there, we're into it. The filmmaking in this is really good. They use a lot of things to their advantage here that they didn't even think about in the first one. So I like I said, I think it's a solid follow-up. A solid follow-up to the first one and should not get lost in the shuffle.
Definitely should not. Well, so far this has been a great series.
I think so. We are very happy. It will get interesting though. It will definitely get interesting going down the pike.
It's gonna go places.
Yeah.
It's definitely gonna go places.
It sure will.
Next up, we've got what some would consider probably the high watermark of the series, since I think Rocky 3 was the most successful financially of all the Rocky movies.
I think at the time it was. It's going to get outdone, but yeah, I think at this point, Rocky 3 really did kind of come out swinging. And it made Mr. T a household name. I pity the poor fool who don't watch Rocky 3.
And because of that, we have the A-Team. There it is.
There you go. We have the A-Team for that. Yeah, so okay. I'm looking forward to next week. In fact, I'm looking forward to actually watching Rocky 3 again because I haven't seen it in a while. So I'll be watching it this week and we'll talk about it.
Same here. I'm going to make sure I watch it earlier this time.
Sweet. Good man. All right, Paulie. I guess we're good.
Yep. Let's do this.
I will see you here next week.
Yes, sir. And have a good night, ladies and gentlemen, and good night, my man.
See you next time. Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube and VidMe for spoiler-free reviews of new releases, as well as in-depth discussions of current and classic cinema. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page at patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.